Welcome to the OC. I'm Phil, and this is my co-host Corey, and we're Ordered Chaos Podcast, coming to you with the Knights Templar, the Templarators.
I don't think they ever called themselves that, Phil.
No,
I'm actually
I just totally made that up.
Sure they never said that. They weren't a bunch of bros.
Yeah, bros before hoes, man. Two dudes on a horse.
That's two dudes on a horse.
Did you see that? I was like, that's two dudes riding a horse.
That was their official mascot, and they were surprised the church had. Anyway, we don't want to spoil stuff. Let's not spoil stuff about where things wind up. For those who don't know, the Knights Templar were a Christian military order of monks of war, as they were, who were originally their goal was to protect pilgrims to the Jerusalem, to the Holy Land. That was their original purpose. They eventually evolved into a bunch of bankers. However, they still kicked a hell of a lot of ass on the battlefield because you had a bunch of people trained in warfare on horses in heavy armor who believed they were fighting for God and therefore would fight to the death.
Yeah. No, there was no surrender. Yeah. That's
okay. When you're fighting the infidels, FYI, there was very little surrender on both sides. Apparently, the Muslims were better at convert or die, whereas the Christians, we tended to be more just the die part. Like, hey,
we're
I
here.
hate you.
Fuck it.
The Templars did not do so well near the end of it. We'll touch on that. And if this is a podcast you're interested in, hey, great, that's the topic tonight. So if not, I've saved you, I don't know, an hour.
Well, let's do like a bit of history, because I did not know anything about Knights Templar. I know it's embarrassing, but it's true. Knew basically nothing. I mean, I knew. Okay, I knew it from popular. Well, I knew like popular, like movie stuff. You know what I mean? Like, but I never really
like Dan Brown.
Yeah, like the Da Vinci Code, but even then, I didn't really, what was the movie with like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where he finds
poorly.
That was the dog's name. It was the dog's name. But you got the old Knight Templar dude.
I think one of the three brothers or something like that. Now that was funny enough. I think that was more I want to say that was more Arthurian than, I mean, they had the Knights Templar cross. He looked like a Knights Templar, but the Holy Grail has always had an Arthurian linkage, right?
Right. Yes. But yeah, I don't know. The big thing is that they did exist. These guys were legit. And so, like, tell me where.
Okay, we're going to have to go back.
Let's go way back.
To Jerusalem in the AD, the year of our Lord, 1118.
Right.
That's when the order was founded, apparently. And it was originally 9 dudes.
That's right. Yeah, but they weren't called Knights Templar at that point. What were they called? They were called...
which one? They had a couple different names at this point.
Oh, yeah. The Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ.
Yes. Also, the Order of Solomon's Temple. Right. There's hey, Solomon's Temple. Where have we heard about Solomon's Temple, Phil?
I don't know. Where did we hear
other semi-secret society that
the Masons? No. Yeah, Masons. Remember Solomon's Temple. Well, and that's where everyone assumes that the Masons are Knights Templar, but I didn't read. There was there's some references back and forth, but I didn't really see anything.
Well, we covered that under our Freemason episode, right?
Yeah.
Where there are some things like there's actually an order within the an order or a rite within the Scottish Freemasonry of the Templar, right? Roseland Chapel, which we can touch on later, but there are a lot of linkages. Now the question becomes are they legitimate linkages, or it's like, hey, Knights Templar, they're not around anymore to say they're not, that we're not.
Are they around?
Are they?
I mean, I mean, if you're being slaughtered, you're probably run and hide too. So yeah, okay, well, go ahead. So 11, what was it?
1118 AD.
Right.
And it's they put it between 1118 AD and 1119 AD, right? And it was nine people. The only one that really anybody speaks of is Hughes de Payens, which is ironic given the fact that I don't know if it's irony, but the fact they eventually become like mass bankers, that one of their founders had the name Payans.
Payans, like baby. We're Payans.
Payans.
They were also bearded. I just thought I would throw that in.
Well, that's okay. Think about it, man. Hygiene was probably they wanted to create that facial binome. Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah,
Phil?
facial
where you
binome.
go off and
I find things in here all the time.
If you are the poor fellow soldiers of Christ, you're probably going to want to store some of that bread for later.
Just stick it in your beard.
The crumbs.
Well, they were often referred to as the Order of Bearded Brethren. Look at that.
Okay, but a lot of people, like beards were very common during that era,
right,
everywhere. And,
but I don't know if it was for knights, right?
I do wonder about that. So I think the actual warriors had the beards, but knights were more of a nobility concept, right? Like you could be a knight and say, well, my dad was and you've got this guy who's inbred with this super mega weak chin who grows like this shredded weak mustache, and he's like, shave that off.
What's going on there? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So we got to go back to the first crusade.
Yep.
Right. That's where this all.
Not the last crusade, which we already talked about, which was Indiana Jones.
I love Indiana Jones.
That was the best of the three. Oh, nah, maybe that. I don't know. Maybe
Temple
the first. I really like the first one. Let's forget the second and fourth ones happened.
The fourth one was terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking first crusade, and of course, the crusade was to take over the holy city, right? Like to convert everyone to Christianity. And
no, it wasn't necessarily to convert to Christianity. It was to reclaim Jerusalem,
the Holy Land.
Yes, not necessarily convert. So
or kill lots.
That tended to be more of the approach. So the Crusades, there's different not captures. There's different interpretations of what the Crusade was. However, everybody can agree that basically they were horrible, horrible, brutal murders of civilians.
Most likely, yes. Yeah.
On both sides.
It's a fucking bloodbath, man.
Right.
Yes, on both sides. But
so why did people do the Crusade, Phil?
Well, because they all wanted the holy city, right, of Jerusalem.
Well, okay, no, that's part of it. But why did Sir Philip go off and
you mean King Philip the Good? Or whatever the fuck.
That's right. And not the good with King Richard the Lionhearted, his buddy.
His buddy. I don't know. Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess I believe
you hit on one of the reasons when you were talking about to reclaim. So there was the Pope had put
Jerusalem,
out, hey, by the way, right? Like this is a crusade. You're fighting for God, right? Any God-fearing people. They were handing out indulgences.
Oh.
An indulgence was basically where I'm saying, hey, Phil, you're a terrible person. Don't worry, bro. I got you. I'm going to speak to the big man. It's all clear. And they actually used to sell these at one point, but they would go off and say, you fight in this crusade, and guess what? All your sins
are gone.
We're good. Go back to your horde.
Okay, I have heard of that. But I mean, really, you've got the Israelis was their homeland. You have the Muslims who claim it as their homeland. You have the Christians who are claiming it as their homeland. And everybody hates everybody at this point, right? And that's
ironically, we're all people of the book.
Muslims are not of the same book.
Well, okay, so technically, Muhammad,
I don't know.
Apparently, Muhammad based a lot of the Quran off of the teachings of I don't want to say the Torah or the Torah, the Jewish. So there's a common root where Christianity, Judaism, and Islam all right. Yeah. So for example, under Islam, Jesus was a prophet, not the son of God, and Muhammad was also a prophet, but the better prophet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. So there were, it's funny, the relationships between all of this, but there were some certain different doctrinal differences.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of that stuff, I mean, we don't learn that in school. I don't remember ever learning about the Crusades in school.
But why would we? What would they go off and say? Hey,
no, I know, but it's interesting stuff. And I like that kind of stuff. I mean, we learned about other shit that was just not that important, but
World War I and II.
Well, those are pretty damn important. We need to remember those, but so yeah, you're saying Payans, they created the order because the Europeans went in, kicked the snot out of everybody,
Go America.
took over the city. And then everybody says, I want to visit the Holy Land because I've never been there. And they have to go through where? It's like through the Mediterranean.
It's a really awful trip. Like you're taking boats to get to areas, and then you're taking more boats, and then you're walking across. If you did this, it was a commitment.
It is, and it's also a wonderful place for people to sit along the road and wait for you to come unsuspecting with all your life's treasures and rob you fucking blind.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, and that was how they were born, right? That was
ultimately that's what they started as. They were designed to protect pilgrims. They were sort of like a police force, and they weren't even really a monastic order, like a warrior order at that point. They were. They got together, they identified this, they said, this is something we're going to do, fine. They did not have a patron necessarily in the church. They were literally begging while doing this. So it would be like, hey, guess what? You got these 9 bearded brethren hanging out with you in armor. You're like, hey, you have a couple choices. You can take this journey by yourself, and I don't know what's going to happen. Or maybe you want me, my buddy on the horse here, to come with you.
We ride tandem. It's like you and I, Corey, on a motorcycle. I always ride bitch. I don't know why.
Gravity. So we can do those wheelies, I guess. I don't know.
You're like, lean back.
And it was to be jump. Yeah. So was their origins, right? They started off as essentially knights protecting pilgrims.
Yeah. It makes sense. And they were poor. This is why they called them the poor man's, knights, because
I don't think they called them the poor man's knights. Poor fellow knights.
Well, okay, but given that, yes, but now as a knight, you would have been someone who was, of status, right?
Yeah. So now, what is of status, right? Sometimes of status means, hey, you were born from a noble lineage, and that's therefore, right, and that usually implies some training.
Right. Now, was that the case with these guys? Because what I read was, it was like you had to give up all of that shit to the church if you wanted to be a Knights Templar.
Once they became a warrior order. So before they became the warrior, so our buddy Payan was a knight from the area of Champagne and Burgundy. All right.
Where's that?
Basically, like, he left sort of that to do this.
Right. And that's, I think most of them kind of did that. Now, like,
they were devout. So this is not, so unlike later, evil big business banker Templars, the original Templars believed very, this is why there were 9 of them, right?
Right.
They believed in what they were doing. This was not a case. So remember when I said, why did people go on the crusade?
Mm-hmm.
Some people went on the crusade because it was, aside from getting, a get out of hell free card, they could actually do really well for yourself. So if you're a lesser son of a noble,
right,
you go off, make your fortune in Acre, right? Go to Jerusalem, become something awesome.
Yeah. That makes sense.
These guys were not them. Those guys were actually, they gave my understanding, the way it's what I've read, is they actually cared. These people actually believed this was, pilgrims needed to be protected, and nobody's doing it.
I think it's a different time, and there's a lot of murder and sort of,
that's
things
a good way of defining that era, Phil. A lot of murder.
Well, I mean, seriously, like you're on a 100-mile trek, on foot through hostile territory. People are going to go missing. There's just, especially if they have like their worldly possessions, right? So, all right, so they started off that way. But then what happens? Like we as we go through, you go the old Knights Templar, they're doing their job, they're starting to grow, they're starting to gain momentum.
The big thing that sets them skyrocketing is when they get the rule of order penned by Bernard of Chavalot.
The Pope.
The Pope eventually signs off on it, but they actually get a patron. So Bernard actually becomes a saint eventually. Like Saint Bernard. I guess
like the dog.
Like the dog, I guess. I don't know. But he goes nuts for these guys.
Yeah.
He becomes their patron. And once that happens, boom.
Things change for him.
big because you get that rule of order, and all of a sudden the Pope is like, hey, you're our warrior, because he actually went off and came up with the rules of, okay, wait a second, let me get this straight, just so we're clear. Jesus loves everybody, right?
Check.
But it's okay for me to put on a sword, to put on a shield and a sword, hop on a horse and stab people to death. That's okay.
In the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus, right? In the name. So because normally monastic orders, usually there was vows of nonviolence, chastity, poverty, right? Obedience. Turns out, in the case of the Templars, they only had 3 of the 4 of those. Chastity.
Yeah.
Poverty.
Women are bad. Women are bad in their order.
Right. There's no room on the horse. There's 2 of us already on the horse. What are we going to do?
You're walking.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You're walking. Me and my buddy are on the horse. I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's because you had the vow of chastity, vow of poverty, and vow of obedience. So this is where you were talking about where they had to give. Now, when you say give all to the church, turns out they didn't necessarily give it to the church. They gave it to the order.
Oh, right. Sorry. You're right. You're right. They gave it to the order, and they could like tell you to like give your armor to like so and so, and all sorts of crazy stuff. I was reading about that. If you had a really decent pair of boots, and someone needed boots that was like a little higher up than you, guess what, Johnny? Take off your fucking boots. Give them to Frank. I don't want to hear about it.
That's right. Here,
put on the straw boots.
You go get Bill's boots. He's lower ranked than you.
Yeah, that guy with only one. He's only got one leg.
Sounds like a you problem, not a me. I guess you'll have to go and get.
I guess you have one boot. Well. One is better than none. That's
exactly.
What
the Lord provides.
The Lord provides. Yeah.
So and not everybody in the Knights Templar were actually full-on knights, right? So this is where you start having the idea that you've got like sergeants, you've got armsmen, you've got people who, for every knight.
Well, okay. Well, there was 3 particular. I wrote them down. So there was the noble knights, the sergeants, and the chaplains, and they didn't all wear the white tunic with a red, which I thought was kind of cool. Some of them wore a black tunic. Like the sergeants.
Was it the black with the white cross or black
with a red?
Still a red cross.
Still with a red, yeah. And the chaplains, they did not fight. They were not fighters at all. They were chaplains. They were there to, go across the battlefield. Can you imagine being that guy? No weapons. You're on the battlefield. God bless you, son. You're cut in half, doing last threats, trying to avoid arrows.
Well, you think about it, though, right? Wow. These are the same people that were happy to be thrown to the lions in the Roman Colosseum. So it's like, hey, guess what? If God wants to strike you down and you're roaming across the battlefield to give last rites to desperate people, you know what? Good on you. There's a place waiting for you, buddy.
I don't understand this. How devout this can you wrap your head around it?
No,
I don't think anyone in modern, and even if you get into super religious individuals, other than like if you go to Jonestown, like we just did, like
ironically, that was the previous episode where for every one person who had to be force fed the Kool-Aid, there were a couple who were like,
I'll just do it. I'll do it. Yeah.
Done.
Thanks, Jim. This is great. Flavor ride. But yeah, like I can't wrap my head around it.
Kool-Aid for everybody. Yeah, exactly. That level of okay. Is it
devout or is it
fanaticism?
I don't know because if you were God says to kill one of your children, like, well, I gotta kill one of my kids. I could imagine, like, no, that's not gonna happen. No. bad God, but no, I don't
Abraham and it was Abraham that had to do that.
Cain and Abel's father, whichever one that was, I can't remember. Not Abraham. Was it Abraham?
I want to say,
I don't know.
I just remember on the rock, and basically he was told to do a sacrifice, and he saw it was a sheep was trapped in the brushes, and he's like,
yes,
not my kid, that kid. Oh, the baby goat. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right.
And it was essentially like this was a test.
Yes. Yeah.
And similar to Job, remember Job?
Got swallowed by the whale?
No, that's Jonah.
Can you tell I'm not a deeply religious man?
Apparently not. So Job was the one who basically God and the devil had a bet saying, devil's like, well, hey, he's only liking you because things are good for him. And God's like, no, bro, no, watch it.
No,
I'm going to make his life terrible, awful. Hold my beer.
Watch this.
Yeah. And he does. He makes his life absolutely horrible. Like and he's like, see, I told you he was devout. And then I think he rewards him kind of at the end, like, okay, sorry for doing all those terrible things to you, Job. And I want to say some other people around him may have died as well, which, were more like collateral damage to me making Job suffer. But
see, this is where I have a hard time with the practicality.
And then it's all Old Testament stuff, right? Generally speaking,
fire,
the newer stuff doesn't
peeling, filleting people, all the other shit. Yeah. So let's we're getting off topic, but we
were off topic a couple minutes ago.
You're right. I know. I'm
reeling us back. Is kind of on topic though, Phil, because this was one of the strengths of these warrior monks. People who basically, like you said, give me your boots. Okay. You're not going to ask what I need them for?
Belief in their cause.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, you see that in militaries, you see that in, they do not question their orders. It's like, this is your orders, this is what you do, and there's a punishment if you don't do that, right?
When you add the element of God, is that, don't worry, God is on our side. Okay.
Yeah.
And you see that level of fanaticism. And I think that's something that's sometimes glossed over with the Knights Templar, at least when they were smaller. I think when they got bigger and became mostly bankers, then they were just corporate America.
Yeah. So maybe if we can explain a little bit more, because I had a hard time understanding. So the Pope says, all right, these are my guys.
My boys.
These are my fucking boys. So listen, I don't care if you're a king. I don't care who the fuck you think you are. They answer to me, and I answer to that dude up in the sky on his little cloud thingy.
Goku.
Right. Goku. So then the Knights Templar are like, this is different. So they don't have to pay taxes, right?
Correct, because church property is not, the only people who can collect taxes on church property are the church. And the church tells the order, we're not, it's church property, but we're not going to collect the taxes. Have fun.
Right. And they were able to build their own oratories. So now they could set up in different areas, right? Instead of, because they were a smaller group. And then what happens? Right.
Well, when you talk about the oratory can be many things, but in this case, they're really fortified little block houses. Like the stuff they're setting up are fortified areas
for banks,
right? Like this isn't just, hey, we set up a church. No, they built a little fort. Like, there we go.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So over the course of like a century, they become like this huge monetary influence.
Yeah.
Throughout Europe and
how did you know how they did the monetary influence?
No, I know they set up banks, but it had to do with what was it, like France was poor as fuck, and
okay, so there were a couple levels to this. So this ultimately fucks them over hard, but what
when they needed money,
they had set up all these little oratories, right? Mm-hmm. These little areas, little forts, right? So if you needed to move money from one end to the other, you didn't need to move your money. You drop your money off in France, and I give you a letter. And I say, you take this letter to wherever you're going, go to the nearest Templar oratory, little fort, and say, hey, give me money.
It's a certified check.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
So, and they would charge a modest fee for this, which, they're already tax exempt. They're already collecting the funds. And yes, right?
Yes.
Now they couldn't technically charge interest or interest under the Christian doctrine was usury, and you can't charge interest.
Oh, okay.
Or reasonable. I don't quite know the doctrine on it, but I believe you couldn't charge interest. So that being said, but you can charge service fees. That's a good thing, right?
Yes. Well, why not? Why not?
So they amass a huge fortune with it. And let's not forget, after the Crusade, there was the sequel, the Second Crusade, the less popular trilogy completion, Third Crusade, which did help because they were usually in the fort. They were often shock troops, so
they were brought.
Yep.
Yeah. They were brought in. They're badass, right?
Totally.
Like these were not like your fucking. These guys were going in to die if they had to.
Yep.
Yeah, because I read about that, and like there's tons of accounts of, being heavily outnumbered, and these Templars go in there and just show their balls and are like, all right, we're ready.
Now they're Scottish.
Now they're Scottish.
Well,
you fuckers.
They were very well equipped. So part of why they
Yes.
were able to collect their own taxes and that sort of thing was because it is very expensive to maintain actual knights. Knights were the tanks of the battlefield. These
For
were the
sure.
armored cavalry. Like these were the guys you
Yeah.
sent in to destroy, to wreck units, to make breakthroughs. And that's
Imagine that poor
expensive.
horse. You got two of these dudes on there.
So this is the funny part. Their mascot was the two dudes on the horse, but I don't think they ever actually rode side. Like I don't think they
No.
ever actually rode.
No, they
two-
didn't.
I mean, because that's
And
not.
most knights had more than one horse. And the reason, did you know that? Yeah. So I thought this was really interesting. So because the weight of the armor on the horse, like you're talking, so you've got a man on there. Let's say he's a big dude, a fairly
Yep.
large man. You've got all his armor. Horses tend to be armored.
If you want to keep the horse, yeah.
Hopefully.
Otherwise, guess what?
Yeah.
I've got a big ass horse bearing down on me. I'm
So
gonna
these
stab the
horses
horse,
get
not the guy on
tired.
top.
It's not like the movies where it's like fucking just go. Horses get tired, and so you would have several horses to trade off. Or if you were a really rich knight, you may have 5 horses. One of the rules, and they would have had a squire, was that you can't beat your squire.
It's important. You also
can
apparently couldn't kiss your mom either.
could not kiss your mom or
Couldn't
wear pointy shoes. No
What
pointy
the hell
shoes.
was with that?
I don't know. I don't know.
I was trying to find the origins of that. That's weirdly specific.
It is very unless like it's like Ron came downstairs the other day wearing those damn pointy shoes. He got
The bells on the end.
Got little bells on the end. Yeah. No, and they weren't allowed to drink or gamble or swear.
Well, so those
Takes all the
kind
fun
of,
out of life.
kind of, when you think of a monk, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
now, funny enough, you think of monks not gambling, fine, swearing, okay, but drinking, some of the
Come
best
on.
beer you're going to get, like the Trappist beers, that's all monastery stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, you take everything away. No sex,
At
no
least leave the
kissing,
booze.
no booze, no pointy shoes.
No pointy shoes. That's right.
What the fuck are you gonna do, right? Like, but yeah, they had some weird, and this was the women, like they weren't even really allowed to, like it was frowned upon to speak to women. Like it was like, oh, don't talk to girls.
I guess the
That's,
best way to
no.
maintain said vow of chastity is to,
Avoid abstinence
I guess.
if you're not around. Yeah, so that in itself makes me like I still don't get it. I don't I'm a fucking guy that fights and kills and does all this stuff, but yeah, I can't kiss my mom or I can't have children, right? Later on though, they did accept men who had families right into the order. I don't know if they were
Yeah, but again,
they weren't
this is
hired.
where we start moving beyond the fact they're warrior
Yeah.
monks and more like, hey, you're bankers. Guess what? Like eventually
Yeah.
that's what they all become. They
That's
go
right.
from being badass hard cases,
the fat
to-
frumpy sort of like rich dudes,
you know,
fat cats, the
yeah.
guys smoking cigars, and yeah, and that's what I'm getting at is you got to remember from what I read, there's 2 centuries of this shit.
Yep.
Like this is not like, oh yeah, it happened on the First Crusade, and then this happened over a long period of time.
And their fortunes really, if a crusade was successful,
Yeah,
they did well. And as crusades were less successful or stopped altogether, their power
Yeah.
started to do this. And once the power starts to do this, well, they're like, hey, how do we make more money? Hey, you know what's a good idea? Let's lend money to kings.
which turned out to be a really bad idea.
Really bad idea, particularly when they have a bad history of not paying their debts back.
Yeah, or just going to war with you and doing all sorts of bad stuff. So yeah, they established new chapters all over the place, right? Like they started popping up.
Yep.
And those chapters also became banks, basically. And they really had a thing for the Virgin Mary.
Who doesn't?
You said that so nonchalant. Well, it is the Virgin Mary.
It's the Virgin Mary.
Virgin, I fucking don't think so. Anyway, don't tell Joseph.
So you're gonna get us banned or something.
I'm just kidding. I'm not.
Thankfully,
really
our
kidding.
16 subscribers,
are all atheists. Thank God.
Well, my mom, she's very much not.
So, did you know they had a fleet of ships?
I didn't know about the fleet. I knew they had ships because this comes up. This factors in some of the when we get later on into the I don't want to say conspiracies, but the legends, stories.
You've heard of Cyprus, right?
Yep, they had the island because that was the Knights of Malta.
They owned that. They owned that. They bought it. That island, we're going to keep a fleet of ships at, and that's ours.
But that makes sense. You've moved from essentially being a warrior order of monks to a banking empire. You know what? The Portuguese, one thing they showed is trade rules the world. So once you start, you got to move that. You got to move stuff around. You've got to be able to do that. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. So where do we go from here? They're now bankers. They're loaded. They're just land of milk and honey for them. Life is good to be other than they've made some questionable financial decisions, lending the King of France money at this point. But what's he going to do, right?
What could he possibly do?
Let's come back to the last Grandmaster, Jacques de Molay.
Jacques de la Molay. Okay,
he was known as as the one who failed to exercise, effective leadership in the Knights Templar. So he was sort of
the last master.
They were declining at this point anyway. So let's not kid ourselves. They were sort of transitioning to a banking empire, but even then, their power, their influence started to wane, not wax, right? Down, not up. And poor Jacques rolls in, right? He's basically captain of not a sinking ship, but it's certainly taking on water.
Yeah. But they start to lose power, and the French notice that, right? The King of France is like, we owe you a lot of money, and he somehow talks the Pope into saying, right? Isn't this how it goes? It's like what is it? It's King Philip the Fourth.
Yes,
Philip with one L. Shameful. And he decided that he was indebted up to the eyeballs. He was like, you are almost owning France right now.
That's right. Now it's a debt. It's like it's a big hole, but you pretty much own it. We owe you more money than what the country's actually worth right now.
Yes. So
that's what happens, folks, when you fight with England. FYI, it generally does not turn out well.
No. So the French, or cheap. So basically, so he talks. Somehow the Pope is like, I'm okay with you guys doing whatever you gotta do.
So apparently, one thing I've read a couple different accounts. So one of the accounts was our buddy Jacques was in Paris. The Pope invited him and said, hey, bro, come to Paris. We'll talk about launching a new crusade because, crusades, money, right? Redemption.
Always. Yeah.
And Jacques decided to go off and talk to the Pope and say, I've been hearing rumors about people are saying my order is full of blaspheming sodomites.
Yeah,
Could
homosexuals.
You look into that?
Yeah. There was homosexuality, devil worshiping.
Oh, wait,
Hitting on the cross.
That's what we'll get the specific charges. So essentially, the Pope says, let me talk to my buddy, the King of France. I'll get him to help you look into this.
Of course he will.
Of course he will. And he does. And guess what he finds? What does he find, Phil?
A lot of cross-spitting and homosexuality and financial corruption and devil worshipping even. I don't know. But there must have been more I don't know.
Okay. So it's funny you mentioned
heresy.
A lot of heresy, Some dude named Baphomet comes on now. So you heard about this. So one of the things you hear about is that the Templars worshipped Baphomet.
Oh, yes.
B-A-P-A-M-E-T.
Yes.
Or they worshipped a severed head that they found in their travels.
Yeah, which
may or may not have been Baphomet.
I didn't get into reading any of this stuff, so I find it quite
so
interesting.
This is one of the big charges of heresy. So there was a knight that was, a lot of this came from a knight that was basically kicked out of the order of the Knights Templar.
Okay.
Right. And apparently he ran to King Philip, or somehow came into King Philip, and King Philip got all these accusations. And one of the accusations was the knights worshipped an idol called Baphomet,
right.
or they worshipped a severed head, which may have been Baphomet, or get this, the head of John the Baptist.
They carried this around.
Right. Yes. I don't know. That's one of the things I thought. So this is one of the, now funny enough, I don't think this was actually one of the bigger,
no,
they're demon worshipers. Okay. That's really bad, the heresy, but
I think when you look at this, when I'm reading it, what I'm seeing is, like when they've done so well for themselves.
Yep.
And nobody likes to see other people do well for themselves. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it's unfortunate to say, because, it's like in business or wherever, like you're always, you're always being shit on if you're doing well. It's kind of a sign that you are doing well.
True, but there's also, you don't get to the lofty heights without making some enemies.
Oh, for sure. And
not just people who are jealous with you, I'm sure.
No, but again, common folk are like, those damn knights, they've got all the money. Mm-hmm. I owe them lots of money, because I'm sure there's, and so I think it would have been easy for people to turn on them. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, why not? They went from begging knights to, rich, industrialists, basically.
Yeah, corporate America. Now, again, when did they turn on them, Phil? Do you have a date in mind when they turned on them?
Well, and I thought this was really cool. It was Friday the 13th of October, 1307. Yeah. So what they do is they round up a bunch of them and they do horrible things in Paris to them. They force confessions, burn them at the stake. What else did they do?
Do you know what the arrest warrant started? What they started the arrest warrant said?
No, I don't, because I thought it was the financial corruption, all that shit. So
the start of the arrest warrant. This isn't. So there's a French version. I'm not. De n'est pas content. Nous avons des ennemis de la fond de la royans.
Oh, you sound so French.
Loosely, God is not pleased. We have enemies of the faith in the kingdom.
Oh. Now everybody's like, okay, Reggie.
Okay, Reggie.
Get the hell out of here. Yeah, no. So that's in 1307. Templars are like, oh shit.
And they roll rounded up on one day. It was now.
No, they weren't all rounded up.
All the Templars, but a large amount of them. I think any ones that were rounded up on that day, those were the ones. It
was a bad day. Well, they actively hunted them down and fucking killed them. That was like,
because all Christian monarchs were instructed, to go off and do this, because the Pope eventually gets behind it. And some of the charges, again, so we've got our devil worship / heresy. We've got, which the heresy seemed to be, forced to spit on the cross and deny Christ. There's our heresy right there. So it really was the whole gambit. So we've got worshiping a false idol. But by the way, if that wasn't enough, folks, they're spitting on the cross. They're denying Christ.
And I don't know. You got these devout dudes. They're not doing that shit. They're just they're being thrown out of the bus.
Apparently they were doing lots of other stuff, Phil, such as engaging in indecent kissing. And they the order apparently encouraged homosexual practices.
Well, they can't be with women. I mean, come on. Even prisons, men take comfort in the arms of other men.
I don't know if it's comfort, some of the things that's happening there, but fine.
Okay. I'm not saying it's
somebody is taking their comfort.
It's not all dreamy and whimsical, I'm sure.
but it gets worse, Phil. Did you know they apparently worship cats?
I have a cat.
And they would kiss each other's navels during secret initiation ceremonies.
That's disgusting. Belly buttons are the filth of your human body.
But you read some of these, Phil, and you're like, wait, did somebody sit down and just say, okay, what's the weirdest thing you can think of? Go. Okay. Cardinal. Okay. Father Phil, weirdest thing you can think of. Go.
Belly buttons. Them bastards.
Done. They're kissing belly buttons. What's
pointy shoes?
Matter.
They're all wearing pointy shoes.
No, they've got an order. They said they wouldn't. We can't use that one. They said nothing about belly button kissing.
Red, high-heeled, pointy shoes.
Well, yeah.
They weren't battle ready when they were wearing their
No. And it's funny you mentioned about the encouraging homosexuality. It's like, listen, guys, your mascot is two dudes on a horse.
Yeah.
And you wonder why.
With two lances. Yeah.
You wonder why they were suspicious.
Yeah, for sure. People find ways always.
And people want to believe the worst, right?
Of course they do. And
like
you're
OJ,
talking about
we want to believe OJ did it.
1300s, you're talking massive poverty. You are either a have or you're a have not. You're
most likely a have not.
You're not
most
like, likely. I live in the suburbs. You're like, I don't know if I'm gonna live today.
Right? Turnip crop did not come in too well, and my Lord apparently wants to take all I have.
Yeah.
Not realizing that if I can't eat, I can't make more turnips for you. So maybe lay off and let me keep mine.
So, you've got people that we think we're jaded right now. I mean, I don't think so. I think we have first world problems,
out the wazoo.
So they lose the Pope finally, what is it, in 1312, the Pope says, okay, the order is disbanded.
He does that after. So what happens first is there is an awful lot of confessions that happen.
Yes. Amazing how you squeal like a little pig when you're being, your toes cut off. Or
did you hear some of the methods they used, Phil?
I didn't. I could have read some of that, but
so you got your obvious.
But you're going
to
tell me.
I'm going to tell you because I have this right. So they use some of the obvious ones, like, "Hey, by the way, we're going to put you on the rack. Hey, we're going to starve you. We're going to sleep dep you.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
We are going to go off and do something called strappado, which is where your tethered arms behind them and you're raised from the ground until your shoulders dislocated. So they tie your arms behind you and lift you up by them.
How painful.
And your shoulders pop out. The worst was called fire torture.
Yeah.
Their legs were fastened in an iron frame and the soles of their feet were greased over with fat or butter.
Oh, perfect.
They were then placed before the fire and a screen was drawn backwards and forwards so as to moderate and regulate the heat. Such was the agony produced by this roasting operation. They're roasting your goddamn piggies.
Your little piggies.
You would go mad. It's like,
oh, yeah, dude. There was some really interesting, it's not interesting, it's really sad, but like the Iron Maiden, and there's so many torture devices. The rack, like you said, you're being pulled apart, like your back is being dislocated. There's
the wheel. Did you hear about the wheel?
No.
Where they would break you on the wheel. So they would essentially have a wagon wheel and they would feed your arms through. And if your arms and legs wouldn't go through, they would just break them and feed them through. And then they would roll that wheel down the road with you on it. You're tied to it now.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
They got creative. They had a lot of fucking time in their hands.
They did. And you had, so this is where some of the funny, maybe funny isn't the right thing. Okay. So
the hilarious torture methods of the Knights Templar.
maybe let's not go funny, but let's say, hey, the purpose of torture is not for the truth.
No,
right.
It's
torture
for
does
a
not
confession.
generally work. It's confession, right? It's what a person being tortured generally tells the torturer what they think they want to hear, not what the actual truth is.
That's right. That's
okay.
Right.
So our good buddy Jacques, he winds up getting cut because he was in Paris at the time, which, in retrospect was probably not a good place to be.
No.
He gets grabbed. He basically confessed under torture to some of the charges brought against the order were true. Now, it doesn't go into details which one. However, he specifically rejected the charge of sodomy.
I will not tell you that I am a sodomizer.
But I may have kissed a man's navel. during
said
initiation.
that?
No, I don't know. I don't know what he admitted to, right?
Those of you who don't know, sodomy is it's bum fun.
Look it up. Google it. Google it, folks.
You know,
It was
and
illegal.
it was illegal.
In
it was
many areas
illegal
for
in
the longest
Canada. It
time.
was illegal in America.
Yep.
Sodomy was so anal intercourse.
Yes, thank you, Phil, for getting us a PG-15 rating. Where does the term come from, Phil?
Sodom and Gomorrah.
And what were those, Phil? Were those a rock band?
They were very funky Greeks. And they had a bathhouse. What's that?
They were very bad cities. Very bad cities.
Yeah. But yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah. You don't want to go there unless
they got blown up with
like Amsterdam, I hear.
Amsterdam is awesome. If you've never been, I don't hang out in the red light district, but the rest of it is pretty cool.
Holland is apparently beautiful. It's a beautiful country from what I've seen on like pictures. Chocolate. I love chocolate.
I'm hoping to see Spain.
You're hoping to see Spain?
Yeah.
I would love to see Spain, but I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
Just with everything, including this new.
We were supposed to be taking
Omicron.
a trip to the US.
What?
We were supposed to be taking a trip to the US, and we're like, I don't think we're going to be taking this trip. I'm not buying my tickets until things get settled. This could be a variant for those who are unaware. We are currently dealing with the 5th variant of concern called Omicron.
Omicron.
Sounds like an angry transformer. I think Omicron may have been a transformer.
It could be. It could be a Decepticon.
It's totally a Decepticon. Otherwise, it would be Omnibot.
We could do those like voiceover guys. This is the Ordered Chaos Podcast. And
you know what? You got that.
What do you by Omicron?
You had your little spit screen there, and you had this cool reverb.
Anyway, but yeah, no, we don't know. I mean, this is the virus is going to mutate. We talked about that in our first episode, COVID.
Conspiracies.
And COVID conspiracies. Like and subscribe. That was so many episodes ago.
Like and subscribe. That was oh God, we're at
I don't even know
30 some on. We're doing well.
We're doing well. We're getting crazy.
We're on Spotify too. If
Spotify and video. You can actually look at our ugly faces. Well, no, not Corey's. He's quite.
You could have already looked at our ugly faces on YouTube, but now you can do it on Spotify. So
that's right. That's right. So yeah, we're everywhere. Oh my God.
It's a horribly long process to upload, though. I don't know. These videos are so huge.
They are big videos. Well, they're also fairly high quality. You can see my wind-burned skin. Look at that. Anyway, back to Knights Templar.
Yes. Okay. So Hugh. He gets tortured. He confesses to everything but the sodomy. He's like, wait a second. I may have spit on the cross and I may have kissed a man's navel and worshiped cats, but no bum stuff.
No bum stuff at all.
Now, what happens was, so this is while they're under basically the interrogation. Now, the Pope does intervene at some point, and the Knights Templar, this is where they get doubly screwed. They think, okay, great. All right, we're going to tell you Pope Clement. I think it's pretty sure it's Pope Clement.
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to tell you we were tortured. We're retracting all our confessions, right? Because, we were tortured. Like they were fake confessions. We were tortured.
For sure.
Okay. And we're good,
like a
right?
witch trial.
They're like, yeah, now you're relapsed heretics.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. So, and basically they disappear. Isn't that strange?
Disappear. They just go away.
There's just seem to
brightly burning pillars.
Poof, gone. And it's quite literally, and I listened to a few podcasts about this, and it's like all the way up and they just vanish. Now, they know they're being persecuted. And these are probably worldly men, right?
And we're talking the ones that weren't captured
and killed.
Tortured.
Yeah.
We're talking the ones that did not get captured and tortured. Right?
Yeah,
those
that
ones
are
that
like, shit's going down in Paris. I'm going to head out to, I don't know, Denmark. We're just going to get the fuck out of here.
Or wherever, right? Then we can touch on that where they actually disappear. But let's go back 1 second to hey, you have all these relapsed heretics now. Uh-oh. What do you do with relapsed heretics, Phil? What do you do, Phil?
You kill them.
How do you kill them, Phil? How do you confirm that their heresy is properly extinguished?
You ask God. I don't know. You tell me.
Little thing, the Salem witch trials where you burn people to death?
Yeah. Same idea.
It works for this too. So
That's why I said it was like witch trials. Fucking nonsense.
Well, it was witch trials on so many levels. First off, there was hardly any evidence to say anything. It was essentially, it was totally a smear job. And second, they wound up tied to stakes. Now, which wouldn't be super significant in and of itself, except for our buddy Jacques. So Jacques gets the last laugh.
Poor Jacques.
Frère Jacques, Frère Jacques. So Jacques he's tied to the stake. He's basically going to be burnt to death, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And this sucks.
Yeah, for Jacques.
This is not good. This is very, very bad for him.
It's very bad for Jacques.
Very bad for Jacques.
And then what
and where is it?
You have me on the edge of my seat.
Okay. By sunset, a stake was erected on a small island in Seine, the Ile de Jeufs, near the Palace Garden. There, De Molay and Descharnay were slowly burned to death, refusing all offers of pardon for retraction and bearing their torment with a composure which won them the reputation of martyrs amongst the people, who reverently collected their ashes as relics to sell. Now, apparently, when De Molay was basically burning, he uttered the words, "God knows who is wrong and has sinned. Soon a calamity will occur to those who have condemned us to death."
Well then, and did it?
Well, soon after De Molay and Descharnay were executed, Pope Clement died of a sudden illness, and Prince Philip, or King Philip, was killed in a hunting accident.
Oh.
And he was succeeded by sons, of which none had heirs. So the line died out.
The line died.
Yeah. So
interesting.
This is what you hear about. Now that's sort of chapter, I don't know, 1 or 3 of the Templar story, depending on how you look. Let's get into the more interesting stuff. Now, before we flip over, just one little thing. Did you read about the Chinon parchment?
No, I read about the Shroud of Turin.
Okay, so the Chinon parchment was actually a document that was found in 2007 in the Vatican archives that essentially where Clement secretly absolved the Templars of all misdeeds and said, yeah, they're innocent.
In 2007.
Well, they found it in 2007.
When was it from them? When was what date?
It would have been
but they're all dead. What does it matter if you absolve them? They're fucking dead. Yeah.
A little late.
What I thought?
Where is it? An investigation. The parchment was dated August 17th, 1713, according to the document. Apparently, according to the document, Prince Clement instructed a cardinal priest to conduct the investigation. Soon after the interrogation, basically said they were absolved. So he absolved the Templars.
The dead ones.
Well, they weren't dead at the time. So technically they weren't dead. This was like, hey, and remember how the Templars said, okay, wait a second, we're being tortured. Hey, we're going to talk to the priest. The Pope's going to help us out. They did their investigation, said, yeah, they didn't. Yeah, no, there's no, this is all junk, but.
Right. So the Catholic Church, and I'm not sure the date, they did acknowledge persecution of the Templars was unjustified.
Yep.
So the church itself has said, okay, yeah.
And this Chinon parchment shows that the Pope actually absolved the Templars of it.
Yeah. Well, Pope Clement, from what I read, was being pressured by, these secular rulers. Yeah. Like everybody.
To it.
Well, yeah, because everybody owed the fucking Knights Templar money.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, and what better way to close your account, so to speak.
But not just that, right? The secular king. So King Philip in particular had a habit of, if you were a pope he didn't like, stuff happened to you, and not fun stuff. Like you didn't get, you died.
No funny bum stuff. It's just you never know.
You never know.
Naval kissing.
Jesus. Yeah. So that parchment absolved them. So really, the outrage that Jacques de Molay, aside from being tortured, I think he felt the ultimate betrayal at the end when it's like, what do you mean I'm still being burned at the stake? And then the order gets dissolved, right? So everything, eventually the Pope dissolves it, which the theory is he bowed to pressure. So that's why this didn't show up till much, much later.
Right. Okay. Makes sense.
So now we've got the order is done. There's nothing more. The story's done, right?
I don't think it is, because
What?
I think there's more. I think that they went underground.
Wait. So you're telling me a sort of quasi secret society gets persecuted, suppressed, and doesn't just die? They go underground?
We've heard of this before.
Wait. That doesn't happen.
What about the Illuminati?
It doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen. So yeah, they go underground. That's the story. Then they're sticking to it. But there's all these cool things, like that they were responsible for the Shroud of Turin. These are like the conspiracy sort of
Gotcha.
theories, right? That they were the keepers of the Ark of the Covenant, right?
Ark of the Covenant, which contains what, Phil? What is
the
Ark
Holy Grail?
No, it doesn't.
Or Bob the Builder.
Jesus. Jesus Christ.
It was an all-powerful weapon.
It contained the tablet, the 10 Commandments.
The 10
I don't know if
Commandments.
they were tablets, like they were
no
broken
idea.
and in there, because I think Moses.
Yeah, it is Moses.
It's Moses.
It's
right?
Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah, he parts the sea, reads the tablets. Yeah, all that good stuff. It's Moses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Charlton Heston played him. Did you ever watch that? When I was a kid, that was beyond TV and we had no channels. So then we'd watch the 10 Commandments on TV. Charlton Heston. Yeah, quite the fella.
R.I.P. Charlton Heston.
NRA, Charlton Heston. And this is that was his legacy. All right. So what else do you have about the Templars? Where do they go? I mean, other than Dan Brown.
Okay, we're not going to fucking talk about Dan Brown. Okay, I have no problem. Okay, we're not going to talk about Dan, because a lot of the stuff he drew upon was from other works, which is what we're going to talk about instead.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
So we've already seen a bit of this with the Freemason connection. Now, mind you, there's several centuries of time between when the order gets disbanded and when speculative Freemasonry starts up. Yes. However, one of the theories is that there are Knights Templar that fled Europe and went to
Scotland. Yeah.
Right? The Sinclairs, right? They joined the Sinclairs. And actually there's a confession of a Knights Templar called Jean de Chalons, which again, I don't think we can trust.
That's the one I was talking about. With the.
You want to talk about his confession?
No, I didn't read about, but it's where he shares the symbols and rituals and some of the traditions of the Knights Templar with the Masons, right? Like he brought some of that into their fold.
You might be thinking of somebody else. So Jean de Chalons he was actually under torture. He said, the leaders of the order fled, and he himself met Brother Gerard de Vils leading 50 horses, and he heard it said that he set out to sea with 18 galleys, and that Brother Hughes de Chalons fled with the whole treasure of Brother Hughes, a lot of Hughes here, de Perrons. When asked how he was able to keep his fact secret for so long, he responded that no one would have dared reveal it for anything if the Pope and the King had not opened the way, for if it were known that in the order that anyone had spoken, he would have once been killed.
Oh.
So this is
a totally different thing that I'm talking about. What I'm
talking about, this is where we have one of the linkages. This is a documented confession where, by the way, a bunch of the Templar Knights fucked off with a bunch of treasure in boats.
See ya. Gotta go. And they probably would have seen some of the writing on the wall, like some of these guys. I mean, they're in the know, right? So, but that's where you got the Scottish Rite. Which is a separate order for Masons. Now, I don't know how they're connected, and nobody really does, because Masons don't openly admit to any of that shit. But so there has to be something. And these guys are devout. Remember, dying in battle.
Yep.
But do they just grow old and not really do anything, or do they?
Knights of the Temple of Solomon.
Right. Well, that's because they shacked up in there.
Well, it's the horses. They could fit the horses in, right?
The horses, and
but you look at that linkage, right? So now a lot of the Freemasons, they talk about Freemasonry, the linkages as being mostly symbolic, right, to the Templars. But there are some rites, there are some iconography, iconography,
symbolic
symbolism.
images,
Fine, we'll go symbolism.
Yeah,
But there's iconography, iconography,
sure.
yeah. Anyway,
I have no idea what you're saying.
and nothing is more prevalent than when you look at Rosalind Chapel in Scotland.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Right. So you look there, and there's an awful lot of Templar symbology, right?
for
So
sure.
this is the idea that not all the Templars. So you did see the Templars split up and fragment, and this is where you see a bunch of other little orders start to pop up. But there's the theory that a big bunch of them went to Scotland and laid the foundations for Freemasonry.
Yeah, and there's belief that there are. Did you notice like there's like modern day Templars now that have just sort of cropped up out of nowhere, and you can join. It's like a secret society once again, and so it's almost like the rebirth of the Knights Templar in terms of, but in a more modern. Hey, I like video games, and I want to be a Knights Templar, and
it's like those things you see on Facebook. Be a Scottish lord. Because they'll buy you a foot of land, they'll sell you a foot of land, and apparently that makes you a Scottish lord.
Perfect.
Under some obscure.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did you read about on this continued trail? Did you read about the Oak Island connection? Which
I did. That's where they believe they. So I've been to Oak Island, which was pretty cool. It was a little weird. It's a weird because you don't really get to go all the way. Like you don't get to see anything really. Like we didn't do the tour.
What's to see? It's an island with some holes in it. Like
but you cross the bridge, little bridge. You get over the bridge, and you have like it's like a tourist trap. So you go in and you look around, and they show you all the things that they found on the show, and there's a bunch of other stuff that they found, but there's some really old stuff. And what they think is that the Templars came and built these advanced sort of like booby trapped
the vault. They built a vault to hold their treasure.
50 feet or so down, and then there's lots of evidence. It's weird. It's a weird situation, but we didn't get to go around it, but a lot of people died trying to get this treasure. Like it's like
that's the A&E series called The Curse of Oak Island.
The Curse of Oak Island, which I've tried to watch, but it's always the same. But we're going to get into the chamber.
How is it any different than any of those shows? Will Bill get the amount of gold he needs?
Right.
Will Jim get all the trees that he needs to avoid?
And it's so scripted. I mean, that's the other part of these shows, which I do like. Not the scripted part, but I like the kind of concept of these shows. But I can't get through them because they're scripted, and you can tell
because
these are not actors. Just let them talk. Let these people be themselves.
You know what also isn't scripted?
What's that?
The Ordered Chaos podcast.
We are not scripted whatsoever
at all. We have to edit
so much
stuff after this.
We have to edit. Oh, it's just crazy. It's some of the language we use and all of the bum antics that happen. And
bum antics. Okay, can we stop talking about bum stuff for at least one episode? Okay, so
fair enough.
So you've got that element. We talked about the Holy Grail linkage at the very start. That's something that's been traditional. Now the Friday the 13th. So
it was a bad day.
It was a bad day and
very unlucky. Yeah.
Apparently, like that is not actually the origins of Friday the 13th.
Oh, really? I thought it was. I don't know.
It's one of the things that have been postulated.
Did you know George Lucas based Star Wars loosely off of Knights Templar? I read that too.
Really?
Well, that they were like honorable warriors.
They were warrior monks. They were really, if you look at the idea of a Jedi, they were not supposed to. Now, mind you, I have a feeling the Templars weren't necessarily super calm when they were cleaving off limbs with their swords.
No, I think, and like anything, it's like loosely based on a concept. But
the hero's journey, the hero of 1,000 faces, I think is what, if you really want an interesting read, A Hero of 1,000 Faces. It talks about the hero's journey, and you get to see it. The idea of that's what George Lucas does with Luke Skywalker.
Yeah,
it's really the hero's journey.
Yeah, and I watched. I watched a few interviews with Lucas, and he's like, I wanted it to be like, the samurai meets the gunslinger meets, kind of idea, like a gunslinger type, Western. Basically, it's a space Western. That was his goal. That's what he wanted.
That was not what came out the other end of that.
It was
good. Don't get me wrong, but it was not.
No, no. But that was his kind of his idea, was like, it's sort of going to be like that, honorable. You got the honorable Jedi, and you got the kind of messed up
nerf herder,
nerf herder, Jar Jar Binks.
Let's not talk about those ones, Phil. Okay?
Those ones are bad. I don't know, George Lucas.
The third one was okay. The second one was, hey, we got the authors of 17 magazine to write a Star Wars movie.
You know what? And they had a good cast. That's probably the worst part, is that the
Ian
cast.
McGregor is getting, Ian McGregor, he's getting his own show as Obi-Wan.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No way.
No.
I will watch that. I love The Mandalorian. I love all of those stories.
Oh, Mandalorian was great. So Mandalorian is truly the Western. So that's where I would say, if you had to go with that Western samurai, Mandalorian nailed it. Like the whole idea of.
Yeah. Well, but the Jedi were honorable. The Jedi were, like they were mystical, and a lot like the Knights Templar were, they were holy men of an order that, was sworn to protect, and
both had high midichlorian counts.
Yes, midichlorian. I can lift things. I can lift up a box or rocks or a Yoda. I don't know.
Now you're singing the Weird Al song.
Isn't it? I love Weird Al.
I lifted a bottle. I stood on my head.
But I won't forget what Yoda
said. Said, Luke, stay away from the darker side. And if you start to go astray, let the force be your guide. Oh, my Yoda. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that
on
song.
YouTube, folks.
On YouTube.
All right.
You heard it here first. All right.
Summary.
Want to do a summary? You do it.
Yeah. So Knights Templar existed 1100s. Rose to prominence during the Crusades, escorting pilgrims, and eventually becoming shock troopers of God. Sounds like a band.
Troopers of God. That is a band, isn't it? I don't know. We'll look it up.
We should
start one.
Start one. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Can play an instrument or carry a tuna bucket. But
no,
we should do
we're
that.
not great at singing.
We're not 15 anymore, Phil. We can't talk about stuff like that. They eventually become very wealthy due to their financial prowess, and unfortunately lent some money to some bad people, one who happens to be a monarch, who eventually leads to their torture and downfall. And then maybe they flee to the New World and become Freemasons.
Maybe
they still exist in some way.
Become
today.
Jedi Knights.
Become Jedi Knights. Maybe George Lucas was a Templar.
Maybe. I don't think so. And that brings us to what we're going to do next week. Are you ready for this? You ready for this?
You don't know, do you?
No, I do. I do, actually. I watched this pretty cool video, and that's why I want to do this. So it's on, I want to do reincarnation.
Oh, okay.
And do you, more of the, is reincarnation something that is possible? Is it something that, is there proof? Is there, there's a whole bunch of things about this stuff that I thought was pretty interesting. And
it's very much a Buddhist, actually, sorry, it's not, I don't think it's a necessarily
I don't even know.
Buddhist belief. The whole point of the Buddhists was actually to break the cycle of reincarnation.
Yeah. Well, what I did was I watched a show, and this little boy, it wasn't a show. It was on social media, but he knew all these things. He was very little. And he knew the name of the person that he was, and he would have terrible nightmares and all these things. And stuff started to check out with this young man. Like he described where he was when he died. Like, we're talking small child.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting. And I know very little about it. And I think it'd be cool. So reincarnation,
folks. Now, just for those who don't remember, it's going to be every 2 weeks.
That's right. You'll have to wait to hear us, but we have lots of content. So you can go through our unorganized, but is soon to be organized content.
Collections for people.
Collections. But otherwise, watch us once or twice, or tell your friends, all that good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Please, the good stuff, not the bad.
Please, the good stuff. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for watching the OC. I'm Phil. This is my co-host Corey, and we will see you when we see you. And the topic will be reincarnation. So good night, folks.
Take care, folks.